Okay, thanks. We're here for ADP today, Thursday, April 19th. Welcome to the Squamish Nation Traditional Territory. First order is a motion to adopt the agenda today. John, seconded Sarah. There's minutes of meeting from our last meeting, March 15th. Does anyone have any corrections on that one?
I just have one, well, actually two, on page 8. It says access to activated doors, automatic doors.
Automatic doors?
And then my name is just spelled wrong. Was it page 9 and 10 actually. I'm just TIPLER.
So automatic doors,
And then
the name,
that's it.
and that's it? Okay.
Got it.
Okay. With those amendments, I'll look to adopt the agenda, minutes. Sarah, motion, seconded. Crossland? Okay, thank you. First order of business is development permit 460 at 1002 Enterprise Place for the District of Squamish. Elaine is presenting.
Thanks, Richard. I will introduce the project. So yeah, this is development permit number 460, located at 1002 Enterprise Place, which is a short cul-de-sac at the south end of the business park. The parcel is zoned light industrial, I-1, as are the surrounding parcels. The local area is developed with other self-storage facilities, outdoor storage, and other light industrial uses. The proposal is a self-storage facility of storage containers. Because storage use has a limited need for parking, the application proposes several parking variances to the zoning bylaw. That's for the number of parking spaces, the number of loading spaces, bike parking, the parking surfacing, and also for irrigation, because there is limited landscaping and no water service to this parcel. The parcel is in Development Permit Area 6 for the Squamish Industrial Park. One of the objectives of this development permit area is to ensure aesthetically attractive industrial developments. The site has a small frontage, with the majority of the site not visible from a street. So attention to the frontage of the parcel would seem to serve to address development permit area guidelines. Staff is seeking recommendation from the advisory design panel regarding the form and character of the proposed development and the landscape treatment at the frontage. Staff recommends that addition of evergreen plant material into the planting plan may better screen the fence, that 1 or 2 street trees be included on the frontage, and to ensure that the plantings are drought tolerant with respect to lack of irrigation. So with that, we do seek ADP comment and recommendation, and I'll turn it over to Jamie Martin, who will present the proposal.
Right, she kind of did present it. So we're, one of the comments was about a roll gate, but I guess there's a need for storage containers in town, but anyway, we're wanting to continue with, we've reduced the amount of storage containers on here due to setbacks and front right-of-ways and so forth. I believe we're going for a variance on the end as well, right? At the rear property line for this one set of containers. The client also wants to use a lift gate, which is a lot more presentable than a chain link fence, which allows to do a bit more stonework on the 2 little boxes or where the gate retracts into. Also to do a roll gate here, because it's on a cul-de-sac, it's very hard to do a roll gate as well. So these are quite a bit more expensive to do, the lift gates. Also, I just think in presentation, streetscaping, they're a little better as well. So The parking we are providing handicap parking and 4 parking stalls on top of that. And I guess that's pretty much, and solar lighting will be done throughout the site, and just regular surfacing on the ground park cover. Yeah.
So it's non-intrusive to puddling of water or anything, everything should sink right into the gravel. It's like a 4-foot base of pit run and then 3/4 base on top. So there'll be no runoff really, it'll just sink into the ground, but there is a catch basin if needed.
And there is a landscape plan as well, if you've reviewed that, is provided for that. So,
Okay.
yeah.
There you go.
The more to comment on, yeah.
All right, so that's, with that conclusion, we'll just go through a round of questions and then we'll go to comments.
Sure.
John, do you want to start with comments or questions, or do you want?
Sure. Is the idea that these containers will be added as needed? It's sort of, or are they all placed in the beginning?
They'll all be placed in the beginning.
All placed in the beginning. Is there site lighting?
Yeah, there's solar lighting on one that they're going to be providing on the site.
Is that all like on ground level, or is it, are there poles above the site for
Yeah,
distributed site lighting?
There is a street light on the entrance, but they'll be basically on the tops of the
containers, side of the containers. We also had to attach the containers with the breezeway to make it one building. So there's, at the last second, I generated cross-section and an elevation of the attachment of the breezeway, which is right there. So that's, it'll just be steel I-beams, more or less, with corrugated roof, silver painted, natural.
And then these are stacked?
No, the containers won't be stacked.
No.
So you need a breezeway for?
Well, we're attaching to make them to conform. Well, they're treating each container as one building. So basically, putting the containers together and attaching a breezeway was a way to get around to make it one building, as opposed to 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 buildings. These are containers, right? So
That's kind of funny. And I'm just a little confused on how the road, it almost looks, do you have a second entry back there? Is that what's going on in the bottom right-hand corner of the property?
on the right corner.
In the adjoining lot? No? Or that's just the turnaround?
That's just the turnaround. There's 2 parking stalls. It might look like an entrance, but there are 2 parking stalls up against on the bottom right.
So you go against the arrows to get in there?
Well, the arrow's just showing direction of cars, or people are coming in to load the containers. So there's, and that's also a setback line there as well. So we're using that as both a means of access for storage access for the vehicles.
Yeah, you can't get into those parking spots, no, if you follow the arrows.
Well, I'm sure that'll work. So I'm also curious, just in regards to parking and operations here. So you probably will have a broad policy that says that cars that are coming up to pick up have maximum 15 minutes for stopping. So they're basically parking in the lanes.
Yeah, well, they'll be parking in front of wherever the container is. Exactly. Yeah. To unload and then carry on.
So you basically do have parking in there.
Pretty much. I mean,
It's just anywhere in the drive aisles you
Yeah.
need to park for a certain amount of time.
but we did provide permanent parking for staff or caretaker, whatever there too.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all my questions.
So they're considered buildings in the eyes of the building code, or buildings in the eyes of the district of Squamish?
Buildings in terms of the zoning bylaw. So the zone limits the number of buildings you can have. And these are buildings that need to meet setbacks.
So we're allowed 2 buildings on the site, is that why the one group to the south?
The regulations are, there's 2 principal buildings. There's, I think it's 2 accessory buildings of a significant size, and then 5 small accessory buildings.
Okay. And what's the height of these buildings, or these containers?
They'll be 8 feet high.
So on the breezeway, can a vehicle pass under?
Yeah, yeah, there's a cross-section up there to go to the other, I had to, I provided a
Okay.
front elevation there, so
Yeah.
it's actually 8-foot container, and then the breezeway is probably about another 6 inches height for the breezeway.
Is there a parking setback for this site? This parking setback from property line? From the bylaw?
Like, can you park within the lot line setback?
No, but isn't there a 1.5 meter that a parking stall has to be away from a property line? Or can a parking stall be right against the property line?
Actually, yeah, I think it might have to be 1.5, yeah.
Because these are right on the property line.
Yeah, 2 of them are, one of them is pretty easy to allocate
Yeah,
for the parking
yeah.
stall.
And I think you're right, I mean, you're gonna park wherever, right? I mean, this is just satisfying the checkbox. But the building number 3 has no setback then to the south? Or are you seeking a variance on that?
Yes, that was my variance, was it?
And there's no garbage storage on site?
Yeah, we could provide that, I would think.
Sorry, that you will
Yeah.
provide it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it appears that all landscaping is off-site, so it's on district lands?
Yeah.
And is the district going to maintain that landscape or water it until it gets established?
We typically would enter into a boulevard maintenance agreement, which ensures that the property owner maintains the boulevard outside their property.
And it says this is a temporary development, so what's your kind of window that you're looking at?
Once the prices go up and it makes it feasible to do another building in there, then we would move to something like that.
So is it 5 years, 25 years?
The building life expectancy of those buildings is about 15 years,
Okay,
so.
good, thanks.
I've got another building basically kitty corner to that, and the question as far as who maintains it, we always maintain right to the curb.
Okay.
So we
Yeah.
have a landscaper that takes care of all that, always looks good.
Good, thanks.
Is the gravel surfacing going to be compacted?
Yeah.
That's all the questions here.
Yeah. Gravel surface go.
It's going to be compacted?
Thank you.
And the answer was yes. Okay, Jenna.
In terms of the lift gate, can you discuss the rationale for it lifting rather than opening in a traditional way?
Do you want to,
Sure.
yeah.
Actually, I'm kind of standing in, my partner Paul is the storage guy, they've got storage, a few other storage places, but they like to have a keypad for people to come in and out. It makes it a lot more efficient for keeping people in or out. And with the gate that comes up, it's just a touch pad that they give or a sequence remotely that they can give to the person. So each person has their own code, so they can tell exactly who goes in when, if there's any problems or anything, you can see who it is. The gate's never left open that way, just makes it a lot more secure.
And that infrastructure doesn't occur for fences that open?
It doesn't work as well.
Interesting. Those are my questions. Thanks.
I just have one question for staff. Are there any screening requirements from neighbors in the bylaw?
So this is an industrial use, and there's industrial uses surrounding it. There are rules around industrial uses that abut residential use,
So
in which
no-
case
all right, thank
buffering
you.
would be required.
Yeah, just the garbage. I'm surprised that's not on there.
So further to what the applicant just said, we have actually talked about this, and
Okay.
and they've told me that the operation doesn't provide, like, there's no waste on site because everyone signs an agreement that they're going to remove the waste from their container. So there's no need for an additional waste bin.
I hope not.
The abandoned couch.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
yeah.
becomes
Anyway,
an issue.
Recycling.
We have a guy that looks after it full-time too, so if there's any garbage, they're in there picking it up all the time. But, I mean, if that's an issue, it's not a big deal to put a garbage container in an area.
that's it, yeah.
Okay. The renderings seem to show sort of a sidewalk in the frontage there. Is that not true? Or what's in the front there? Is it just a gravel boulevard?
Where the landscaping is?
Just on the left of the property, just the rendering around the cul-de-sac looks like it's.
Yeah, there's no sidewalk there.
Yeah, okay. It's just a gravel shoulder. I
Yeah.
haven't been down the cul-de-sac.
The property line.
Okay. And parking, is there ability, have you looked at relocating those 2 parking stalls on the east side? Mostly to push it more closer to that building 3, so you can get cars driving through that alley instead of dead end.
Sorry, the,
The parking stalls on the right,
yeah.
if you push them down towards building 3.
Oh, you mean down the other end? Like towards the south?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you can get.
Just we could move the containers over and then we could park further down there as well, yeah.
Okay. Do you have a grading plan? That's, you have a low spot at the catch basin and that's everything's grading to that point? Or-
Yeah, actually I took, I did have the arrows on there. There's a catch basin you can see.
Yeah,
So I did, there was previously showing the arrows, like the grading going to the catch basin, yeah.
I think it's on another drawing.
Yeah, we had it on another drawing, so we were just leaving that.
so everything from the north generally falls towards Enterprise Place?
Yeah, and the,
We've graded it that way. Plus these containers are up on blocks,
Okay,
so the water passes underneath. Again, nothing ever flows really on top. Whatever hits the ground just dissipates. Because it's, like I say, 5 feet of pit run and then 6 inches of 3/4 base on top, so nothing really runs on top unless it's frozen.
yeah, what do you do with snow?
Then we've got, we snowplow it. We've got spots there for snow, storage for snow.
yeah, down the side.
Yeah, right along the left-hand side.
Yeah, along that far, yeah, that long
Yeah,
length there.
That's the right
it's an
of way.
easement actually.
Yeah.
Water line goes through there.
Okay. Off property though, right? Or
No, on
your
the property.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. That's my questions, thanks. Round of comments. Any last questions you missed? Okay. John, do you have any comments?
Just a couple. I'm going to assume that you know your business very well, but I would suggest that screening is not a good idea because for safety's sake, it's better to be able to see into the site if somebody's doing something malicious. And site lighting, solar lighting is great, but it may not be quite adequate for security purposes, so that's just something to consider on that side. And then also, I mean, garbage maybe not, maybe, but more so recycling opportunities for people that do have stuff that they occasionally want to throw away. But that's, once again, a business model situation.
You're almost attracting them to throw it in there if you provide, that's the way we kind of.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a convenience issue that maybe they should be paying for, but, you know, we want to encourage good recycling habits, so
Yeah.
how do we possibly do that? And that has to be something that you discuss with the business model, I guess. So,
Yeah.
but that's it for me.
You know, it's not, these aren't remarkable kind of projects because they're very utilitarian, right? And if it's short-term, that's great. If it's long-term, I'd like to see a little bit more investment in kind of some of the finishes of the public front to it, or maybe off-site, so it's boulevard planting. I think you might want to look at things like if you have a key entry, then you need a queueway so that you can pull up and actually punch in the key without getting out of your vehicle, walking over the gate, doing it and back into the vehicle.
Yeah.
Vertical swinging gate, because I've done one of these before. Vertical swinging gates potentially are dangerous. We have done roll gates, which are safer. They're not going to come down on a kid or an animal or a car. You might look at your circulation again. I think you want probably a perimeter circulation because you're going to have a cube van going through there. And you don't want to be backing up because of these little breezeway thingies. So I think your arrows need a little rework on that. Yeah, I think the landscaping doesn't need to be garden-esque. There's a big poplar tree out front right now, and I know they're a bit brutal on curbs and things like that, but it's big and it's green. I'd almost be inclined to keep the poplar for now because this whole thing's temporary. And at least has a presence over a little Japanese maple, which are a bit twee for something like this. If it's industrial, treated industrial, have a big tough tree or some really kind of basic planting. Don't get too cute about the planting. And then I guess you'll enter into an agreement to make sure that that's maintained and established, because no irrigation doesn't work, at least for a number of years. And I think there's opportunity to do some stormwater management here, but if it's percolating really well, then that's great. And I would hope this project is only kind of in this situation for 5 years and not 25. But that's about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't really have many comments, not much to comment on. Just that from that accessible parking stall, that it's compacted to, if it's an employee, that they're able to move around the site. That's really about it. Cool.
I would echo a lot of Crosland's comments, and particularly with the fence, it seems like it could become a bit of a liability concern, if someone was to get caught under there coming down. So I'd encourage you to see if there was something out there that would allow for more of a standard opening. And then again, the planting, I think, as Crosland had said, it's quite precious, and I think something a bit more robust would be more suitable. Perhaps if the cottonwood does have to come down, maybe there's something like a linden or something that has a bigger presence and maybe has some habitat value as well. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no comments because there's no architecture to comment.
Yeah, I'm good as well.
Okay.
Weighing on the landscape architecture.
My two comments are to get a grading plan sorted and provide swales so that it does get to the catch. It's quite a long stretch from the north to the south. The catch basin could be relocated more where the snow is going to be piled and run off. I assume that's going to catch basin and then connection to a storm system.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it is flowing to there now.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been in the same rate for 20 years, so,
That's an existing catch basin.
yeah.
And then just relook at your parking so you do get circulation around the whole perimeter.
Again, the way the roads are working now, they basically pull in and back out, and they're fairly, how wide are those lanes?
There's 19 to 20 feet wide.
So they
The
may
narrow's
look
on
like they're
17.
narrow, but there isn't really need to go all the way around. There's plenty of room for big trucks to pull in and back up to each unit. So,
Okay.
I mean, it's hard to see, I guess, the width. Oh no, the widths are on there actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, 19.8 is the smallest side. So it's almost the size of a road, right?
Yeah. Okay. You prefer the turn around at the end there rather than pushing the one stall down and having a circulation through. Is that what you're saying?
Sorry, what was that?
It's for those two stalls on the
On the
far
lower
right.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
if one went down
Yeah.
towards the 0 setback line,
yeah,
then you could circulate through.
totally, yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, any final comments? Okay. We are to vote. There's 4 choices. And I can read them. ADP A, ADP supports the project, does not see this project return for its further review. B, ADP supports the project in general and would like the applicant to work to resolve the following recommendations. We can summarize those. C, ADP supports the project in general and would like the following applicant to resolve the following recommendations and return to ADP. D, ADP does not support the project for the following reasons. So any discussion on A, B, C, or D? No, hearing none. Can I hear a motion for A, B, C, or D?
I'll make a motion for A.
Motion A, okay. Supports the project and does not need to see the project return for further review. Meaning, none of our comments?
I think there's some things that they can work at with
Yeah.
staff, but
Right? Which is B. So, motion for A. Vote for A. 1, 2. Motion against that. Denied. So do I have a motion for another?
motion for B, supports with staff to
Resolve the following recommendations.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's vote for that.
Sure.
Okay. Should we summarize those? Okay. I saw limit screening in the front. So the summary of those is limit screening to the front, and there was discussion about keeping that existing tree or using a more robust tree. Solar lighting being not sufficient enough. Look at other opportunities there. Review recycling opportunities. Provide a keyed entry or keyway. And review the
For the QA, wasn't it, for the keypad?
keypad.
Yeah.
You want a queue?
I don't know, queue, it's just a parking space so that you can reach the
Yeah.
keypad from the car. Or the property zone. Yeah, on the left.
Right, on the left. Review the vertical swing gate requirement or design. They tend to be dangerous. Possibly look at the roll gate or swing to the west property line. Review your circulation routes. And make sure the gravel is well compacted. Is there any other ones that I missed? No. Okay.
Do you want the
Richard,
swales?
Yeah.
We talked about the swales.
the first recommendation you had was limit screening to the front. I'm not sure, can you
Yeah.
just clarify that?
Okay. John, did you get that comment?
Yeah.
Oh, it was just a general comment about all sides, that it's better to be able to see in there. So the front, yeah, probably good to be able to see through there a little bit. So I guess my comment was more around let's not impose screening requirements.
Thank you.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't take that as no landscaping though.
No,
So
no.
visibility into the site, but, so low level and upper level, but maybe no middle story.
And finalize your grading. I think that was the only comments. So the motion for B, and we chose vote for that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We need a second one.
Oh, we need a seconder.
I mean, motion, so.
Sarah.
Oh, second.
Sarah is seconder.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, let's reconvene. The next on the menu, development permit 467, 1002 Industrial Way. Presenting for the district is Jessie Fletcher.
Good afternoon, Advisory Design Panel. My name is Jessie Fletcher, planner with Community Planning and Infrastructure. Here today to present a development permit for 1002 Industrial Way. The proposed project includes 2 industrial buildings as permitted under the light industrial I-1 zoning. The proposed development is subject to development permit area 5, that's Highway 99 corridor. Designation is established to regulate the form and character of commercial and industrial development along Highway 99. Project has not previously been presented to the panel. Staff are seeking ADP's comments on the building form and character, including treatment of sidewalls, building material, and any other items relating to DPA 5 guidelines. Staff will note that the building does largely comply to the zoning, with the exception of section 41 landscaping for parking areas. That requires 1 landscape island for every 8 stalls. Staff are optimistic we can resolve this moving forward. And I will hand it over to the applicant.
Good afternoon. My name is Marco Ciriello. I am the architect of the project, the principal of the studio architecture. As Jessie said, the development comprises of 2 buildings. Probably we should go to the side plan in order to see the layout. The 2 buildings are perpendicular to the industrial way. They have a space in between which is occupied by parking. The entrance is from Discovery. Because of the floodplain, there is approximately 5 feet difference between the building and the surrounding areas and the surrounding sidewalk, which needs to be negotiated. At the entrance, it's negotiated through a ramp. The access, as I said before, the space between the buildings. On Industrial Way, there is no entrance. In effect, it is not allowed to have an entrance from Industrial Way. And so the difference in level is actually part of the landscaping, as well as the landscaping, and Meredith will talk about it, just introducing it. The landscaping actually slopes from the sidewalk, merging the elevation of the sidewalk with the sidewalk in front of the building. The material it's mainly for the walls built up. The structure is going to be steel and open web joist and metal deck. Fenestration it's facing the street. The corner is highlighted with continuous fenestration. Perhaps we can go to the elevations. Those are generic, the floor plans of one of the buildings. Before we go to fenestration, let me explain the inside of the building. The inside of the building has a mezzanine. And so the entrance to the mezzanine is from the parking. So if you can imagine, the upper part is the space between the 2 buildings. The lower part is facing the street. And so the mezzanine is accessed through the stairs, which go over the washrooms, and then we should have the second floor. Sorry, we should have the second floor now, and that is the mezzanine of the upper part of the mezzanine. The entrances at the ground floor are covered by canopies. The 2 buildings virtually works in the same way. The entrance to the mezzanine is from the inside, and the mezzanine faces on one hand faces the part between the buildings, and on the other, for the other building, it faces Discovery Way. Unfortunately, in order to fit it in 11 by 17, the plans are one for each for each sheet. So I hope that can be followed. This indicates the elevation of one of the building. As you can see, this one is actually the building facing Discovery Way. There is a glazing at the corner and a series of glazing facing the street, especially for the upper part, which is the mezzanine part. There is still glazing where the overhead doors are between the buildings, and those are at grade. And we have highlighted all those elements with a steel structure on the face of the building with a C-channel that are in fact inlaid with this type of panel, this type of material, which is not real wood but resembles very much wood. It's a composite panel, resin panel. So once it's applied into the C-channel, then it will look like a wood unit. It's very durable, doesn't decay, and so doesn't require any maintenance. It would appear always in center. Again, there are a series of reveals that on the panels that allows to define apart more details, but also allows to define the color and the location of the colors and the color. If we look at this shows the elevation of the building that we just have seen, and we're using a palette of color, bluish green with some highlight of mustard golden colors in some of the parts, just to highlight some of the elements of the building. The elevation of this is the elevation of the other building to the east. And the character of the building is basically the same, apart from the back elevation of the building, considered back, but in fact it's not, and probably the color of the elevation shows better. Where we are using the same vocabulary with some windows, and that is to break up the continuity of the surface of the panel and to inject some interest and some scale to the surface. Sections, just to give you an idea of the scale, now you can see how the mezzanine is actually accessed. One is accessed, one faces between the building, the portion between the building, and the other one faces this column. Garbage enclosure is done through tilt-up panel, it's fairly permanent, and there will be steel gates in front of the garbage enclosure. The palette will be very similar to the one of the building. So it's a kind of permanent element that complements the building. Sustainability makes a durable material, obviously. We will use recycling element that contain recycling material as much as we can. There is ample light between the penetration within the building, and so that would diminish the use of lighting. Basically, those are the general aspect. The material is fairly durable, as you can see. Even the one that highlights as a wood, again, doesn't require maintenance. So in reality, the use of varnish and things, it's not going to be necessary. Very durable. This is yeah, you can talk about it. That's basically it. So I'll invite Meredith to talk about the landscape.
Okay. My name is Meredith Mitchell with M2 Landscape Architecture. I'll go through the landscape and generally the comments involving drainage and then how the grading is working and then obviously landscape comments. So as it's been noted, the buildings and the parking area is elevated approximately between 4 and 5 feet. It depends on where you are on site from the elevation of the crown of road essentially. And so starting on Discovery Way, you can see that there's a ramp to the access to the site. It's ramped up to the parking area. There is an accessibility ramp for pedestrians on the street frontage that goes on. It's been integrated with the landscape as well as the lobby entry in the center of the first building. And then there's a secondary set of stairs that are closer to the corner. On the Industrial Way side, there's 2 sets of stairs, actually 3 sets of stairs that go 2 in the center on either side of the parking, and then there's a 3rd set of stairs that go into the rear of the second building. At that point, it's a little bit lower, so there's actually only, I think, 4 stairs at that point, 4 stairs in the one in the front of that first building, and then it gets up to 5 stairs, and then 5 or 6 stairs on the Discovery Way side, so you can see how the grading works generally. Now, internally, there's CBs, and those CBs, the water in the parking lot drains into those CBs into a detention tank, which is the hatched area in the landscape plan. That center sort of rectangular area is detained in that tank and then has a slow timed release to the storm off-site. That's how generally it works on site. Now in the back, on the east side, where the green landscaped area is with the trees, that's actually also quite a slope. There's a little bit of a retaining. Now what's happened is there's a walkway back there. The edge of the walkway itself actually returns as a retaining wall, and then the landscape is actually mounted up against it to account for that. We have a little bit of a swell at the property line to ensure all water is captured on site at that point. We do anticipate that there's very, very little water going to be going off of that edge at that point, and there is a CV at the top northeast corner to capture any water that's at that point there. So plant material generally is attractive, ornamental. Because of the actual grade change in site, the landscape's actually quite wide in comparison to what a normal industrial site would be, or a light industrial office building would be. There's actually quite a large amount of landscape because we've had to slope the landscape area. Essentially, it slopes between a 2-to-1 and a 3-to-1 slope to account for the grade difference. Now that does actually allow for a fair amount of good landscaping, which we've provided with layered landscaping, ornamental perennials and such to the front, ornamental grasses, and then low hedge materials. We have good septet into the site. In regards to the trees that are on the Discovery Way side are dogwoods, the Eddie's White Wonders, so it's a good mix of deciduous tree on the southwest side for screening and shading on the upper floors if you need it. The columnar trees on the industrial side, more dogwoods, and then large liriodendron trees on the east side to provide screening to the backs of the buildings. Now on the north side, it's actually a retained existing hedge. So that's just going to be retained and protected and obviously re-and-breed if any construction damage occurs. And the garbage is at the back there. There is a screen hedge surrounding that structure as well. There's also a photinia hedge that we're providing on the east property line beside the liriodendron trees to provide really good, permanent evergreen screening on the east property line. And there is, I believe, some overhangs at all of the door entries on the parking lot side to ensure that people who are at the doors are screened. And then the other, just last item, was that we've got some entry signage in the center, right at the first set of stairs to the first building at the corner. There's bike racks at each building at those sets of stairs there. There's 3 bike racks for 6 bikes at each stair entry at that point. The walkway wraps around from the front of the building on Discovery Way side so they can access it at that point. And I believe that's it. Oh, the accessible stalls, there's 2 of them on the street frontage of the second on the frontage of the second building there. And we have feature basalt columns at each set of stairs as well, just to provide entry focal points for where those stairs are access-wise on the industrial side. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Okay. That's it? Good. Okay, we can do a round of questions, and we'll go to comments. Who wants to start? Ted? All right.
Well, I have a question to planning on, I thought we were looking at 3D renderings with our maps coming in.
So we need to change the bylaw to do that. That hasn't happened yet. There are a number of applications that have been in the queue for months that are gonna go through the ADP that we're probably not gonna get 3D renderings and all.
We haven't changed the bylaw yet, have we?
No.
So what other way can we require that without changing the bylaw?
Encourage it.
Yeah,
There was
encourage it.
one view that was at the very beginning, but it disappeared quite quickly.
Oh, yeah, whatever.
We have a rendering.
There.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it's right there.
Okay. Say no more. It would be nice to rotate it, but it's still, thank you.
I'm sorry, we didn't do it.
Yeah, you could do that, couldn't you?
Okay. Well, actually, with this particular application, it's a view. In reality, what happens is that they do the grid and then they dress up the view that has been chosen.
This is a rendering.
Which is this one.
Yeah.
If you want to render the whole thing in order to rotate it, then it's a different process.
Okay, but a couple of views wouldn't be really imposing too much extra work on you guys.
Probably.
Yeah.
But it's a valid point.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
That's all.
Okay. Any other questions? Cheryl, do you want
On your site plan, rooftop unit screens, what is the material, proposed material?
Rooftop screens.
Oh, the screens are made fundamentally of the same material, slots of the same material that we are using on the facade.
so
So
the-
wood, yeah, 2-inch.
Okay, good, thank you. So your,
But the structure will be steel.
yes, yes. Your last page of the architectural package, this is regarding the garbage enclosure detail. Just a clarification, architectural is showing tilt-up panels, I think, the last page. Landscape is showing some woody, kind of consistent with that, so what exactly is being proposed?
We would be going with the architectural detail.
Okay, so tilt-up. And the reason for that is?
It's durable. It can be expressed in the same way as the building with reveals. The colors could be the same. So it's integrated in the whole character, we thought.
So thanks for bringing the material board. Can you explain a little bit why you've chosen the color of the glazing the way it is? It's
The color of
a bit of bluish tint, right? Is that
Yeah, the color, yeah, it's going to be that. And the color of the glazing, I thought that it was complementary to all the other colors. And therefore, not only that, but I found it fairly relaxing. There is a shading coefficient that is very, very good. And therefore, there are a series of factors that led me to choose that color, which I didn't think it was offensive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it. Great, that's me. In terms of circulation,
I should point to the red.
yeah, renderings.
Yes.
So in the site plan, the eastern building on the eastern edge, it has the pathway that's connecting to Industrial Way.
Yes.
What is the nature of the back of that building? Is it a separate use on that side?
No,
Or is there
no,
main
it's an
entrance
exit,
here and
those are basically exiting for the same building.
whereas the other building has dual purpose, that it could be?
No, the other building is the same, in the
Same.
same configuration, yes.
Okay. Okay. And then in terms of site plan, I'm wondering about, did you give consideration to how those that are coming up Discovery Way up the ramp, are they able to have a strong pedestrian connection across to the other building? Because
They
they're
do,
sort
actually.
of walking through parking at the moment.
No, they're walking on the side of the parking, I believe. They are well, no, they are walking on the side of the handicap parking. So the extra space that is reserved for the handicap parking, that represents then a walkway.
Okay. And then in terms of the form of the building, I'm wondering if there was consideration or opportunity for some reveal in the facade. There's a lot of color change building to building, but it's very much a wall. Was there a consideration to?
I agree, because looking at, frankly, before coming here, looking at the rendering, one thing that I felt is you see the building at the back, it does exactly what you're talking about. And I think that the building at the front requires exactly that. Where there is the color change, the panel in effect should be projected, and therefore that portion is highlighted. I agree 100%.
Okay, those are all my questions, thank you.
Okay, Tor, I'm just going to ask again
Please.
about how you're connecting from the accessible parking stall back to building A. Because it doesn't appear that there's enough space beside those 2 parking spaces to travel.
Yeah, can I answer that one?
Yeah.
I think what the easiest way to do that, because currently there isn't actually a pedestrian-only access. I think the easiest location to do that is if we actually added a painted crosswalk going straight across that way. So that would go straight across, pop out here, you either go into this building or you come across, you go across there and then across that way. And the only way to do that is we would have to cut down the planting beds a little bit there and add let downs at the 2 edges.
Okay. And then likewise, how much space remains at the, you turn in the ramp to the edge of where this tree
So
is?
you go like,
Yeah, no, I recognize that
Yeah.
that's how it's going,
Good.
but the 8.3% is the minimum requirement. It's far too steep, so I'm just trying to determine whether or not you have enough space to extend that ramp to reduce.
To make it
the slope.
easier
Yeah.
to ride. We're going to definitely explore
we
it.
got room to that, we could slide that down, to slide that.
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
explore it, no question.
Okay, those are my only questions, thank you.
Why extra parking beyond what's required by the bylaw?
Why the extra parking?
Why you're required 26 and you've got 33? Is that right?
Because I think that accessibility makes it easier for accessibility, easier to use those spaces and therefore less congested. So that is the reason of the extra parking. There is also a marketability, obviously, that is influenced by the presence of extra parking. So I think that it's only positive. There are only positive aspects more than.
So let's assume all the parking stalls are full, including the handicap, and then somebody comes down to that end. How do they turn around?
They just back up, and that is the required maneuvering time.
Yeah, it's conventional to provide a turnaround, but we can deal with that in comments. So you've got extra parking stalls, but haven't met the design guidelines which require a planting island every
That's correct.
stalls. Okay.
That's correct.
You show signage above the canopy, high up on the building.
That's correct.
Way up on the towers. Okay. Why, on the landscape, why the patches of lawn down next to the sidewalk, especially along Industrial Way, that's fairly steep?
Can I answer that?
I think you were saying 2 to 1, 3 to 1, right?
Yeah, I showed the edge of the 2 to 1 is the edge of the planting bed. The
Okay.
sod lawn is flat.
Okay.
And normally it's a requirement from the city to have some internal boulevard, external boulevard, if you will, in between the 2 sidewalks. So we wanted to sort of take the 2 to 1, just from a comfortable and pedestrian sort of safety. And also, you don't want the soil sloughing onto the sidewalk, so I always like to have a flat area before the sidewalk.
Okay. So, but there's along Industrial Way, there's a the landscape comes forward where the parking is, but back where the buildings are, right?
Yeah, mostly just because I wanted to have a screening element of landscape in between where the parking is, and then where the buildings are, there was room there that even with the 2-to-1 slope, that the sod lawn could be flat, and then at the corner itself, I pulled the landscape forward towards to the actual sidewalk itself to create sort of a feature corner of planting.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is there an established street tree for Industrial Way?
there's no street trees.
Okay. Explain your logic behind, and this rendering does a good job of it. So you've got, and I don't see the labeling on the drawings, and I can't quite read the graphics. I'm not sure. Is that Eddie's White Wonder are the first 3, and then the next 2, and then what are the pickle chip ones in the on the?
Yeah, the ones on Discovery Way are the Eddie's White, and then in front of the small
In the last 3, sorry, here, these
Eddie's
last,
White.
and these are
DeWickies.
Okay. And they don't relate to the architecture, like here you can see the dock beach, and then down the other way, you're not repeating the same. It seems like you have treatments that aren't responding to the architecture and the entryway.
It was mostly just sort of, we wanted to have a panel of something different on that side, and then provide entry visibility beyond the ground plane planting into the parking area for the columnar trees, and then in the back building, we went again with the larger sort of native tree.
Okay.
But, you know, that's something that we can look at, obviously.
And there's some existing fairly significant conifers on the east property line. Is that on the neighboring property? Is it on the property line or on this site?
They're borderline right now. On the east property line, there's a spruce, and then there's some cottonwood, I think. There's scrub stuff.
Yeah, but there's
Yeah.
I thought there was about 3 really good conifers along there.
Yeah, I think there's spruce and Doug fir. There's
Are
something
they
there.
worth considering keeping? Or
I
is the
think
grading going to change that?
at that stage, what we're concerned about is grading. Like technically in the back area there, it is a 2-to-1 slope in the back there. So it is landscape, so technically you could, but what you would end up with is a flat area that doesn't, they don't like having that much fill on top of their root systems, and they're right on the property line. So I would suggest that that's something that we would look and coordinate with the city about.
Okay, good. I think that's it for my questions. Thank you.
I'm a little confused by, down the middle I see continuous parking stalls with bollards. And then on the buildings I see roll-up doors, which presumably would need an access lane to get trucks in and out of. Sorry?
The parking in front of the overhead doors.
Yes. So the question was, the consideration was?
Do you expect trucks to be able to back into and load into the
No,
doors?
those are mainly access doors. So the way it is treated here, we are providing the required loading for the whole development. But those are small bays. So in reality, what is going to happen, and we have done a similar development in Vancouver, where in fact the use of this, apart of that, does convenient entrances. So people with trolleys and so on, they move in the stuff from the loading. But secondly, because van, they go like in front and they unload what they have to unload. So
those, excuse me for interrupting, but
no, please.
I'm just getting a little confused by what you're saying here.
No
Are
problem.
these roll-up doors or not roll-up doors that are depicted on the
those
on
are
the east
overhead
elevation?
doors. Those are roll-up doors.
Full height roll-up doors?
Yes.
Which presumably any industrial tenant would need access to at the back of a truck or potentially pull vehicles in and out of. Say you run a glass repair shop for windshields. You need to be able to get the cars in and out of those roll-up doors and work inside of your industrial bay. So if you have strip of parking bollards, that's impossible.
No, but there's no, sorry, I'm Dave Harper with Sterling Pacific Development. There isn't bollards, so you can't get in and out of the overhead doors.
There's wheel stop shown on the drawing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are wheel stop, but you're not supposed to go in with the truck. You're not supposed to go in. You leave the spaces, so you park your car. Suppose you back up with your van. You open the door, and then you utilize the overhead doors. So that's what it is for.
And
So
I don't think I've ever seen anything like this, and I've worked on a lot of industrial and commercial properties. It's the essence of light industrial use is to be able to get vehicles in and out of a high roll-up door.
I understand. I wasn't under the understanding either until I saw these final ones today that the vehicles will have the ability to go in and out of the bays. A lot of the uses here aren't going to be using the overhead door all day. So it may be, a print shop or whatever the case is that fits in the zoning where they need the access, and then having the overhead door is great, but they're going to be going through the man door most of the time. If you had your example, a windshield repair shop, then they would be bringing their cars right in. So obviously they need to be able to take the vehicles in and out. So it's going to depend on each use, each tenant.
Certainly, each one needs full flexibility.
They need full flexibility to either use the overhead door, to put a van in, or not use it.
So then the wheel stops could be removed or not?
They would be removed.
And how does that affect the designation of whether or not it's a parking stall if it's a drive lane scenario to get into a man door or get into a big roll-up door?
I don't think there's a prohibition in the zoning bylaw that wouldn't allow this to happen.
It's almost like a flex park space. It's a drive lane or a parking stall, and that's...
Yeah, somebody who is in a tenant of that space is going to be the one who's going to probably park there. If somebody's coming in their van in the morning to take something, they'll park there, or delivery or whatever. So it's going to be designated to that unit. So then if they need to get in, then they'll move the vehicle.
Well, each unit should be able to vary in its use and what its needs are. But if you restrict it by somehow adding something permanent, and then I'm just wondering how to planning whether or not that truly designates a stall as a parking stall. Or if we do have a regulation for flex drive lane / parking. I'm curious. I just haven't seen this before, and that's what I'm asking. My other question would be, did you look at an L configuration of the building and potentially a more commercial style of use rather than just in pure light industrial ways that you see throughout the park everywhere else? It's very high traffic, highly exposed corner. So
it's highly exposed corner. We have gone the full gamut. Just as a background, when we originally started this project with the planning department, we originally had the access coming off of Industrial Way and had full approval from the planning department on that. And so that's how we actually had it laid out, and everything was different. And then there were some changes in the planning department, and they said, no, we don't want that. So then we had to completely redesign it for this. So there has been some back and forth, and we have looked at totally different configurations, floodplain concerns, et cetera, for water flow. So we've looked at numerous considerations, and we've looked at, obviously it's industrial zone, so we looked at what type of uses could be there. And that's why the one building in particular that's facing Discovery Way has sort of two ends to it for access. It's got the windows and that type of thing, so it could be a quasi-commercial use that would face Industrial Way. The corner building, again, perfect quasi-commercial type of use that fits in the industrial zone, of course. And it would animate the corner. So that's why it's a little tricky with the parking, because your building is facing Discovery Way, and then your parking is at the back. And so we want to have good access at the back, as well as exposure on Discovery Way. So that's why.
Okay, I'll reserve my comments until we get to that part.
Okay. I like the idea that their access is Discovery Way, not the other one. There's a couple intersections across the street that are difficult to manage, so speaking to that, I do prefer it on Discovery Way. Is there any requirement for street lighting on the frontage here?
There is architectural lighting on the building at all of at the ramp, the stairs, the door entries, all of that kind of stuff.
Okay, great. And to the north, is the driveway right next to it? I don't remember what that site is, the north site. Do you have a driveway right there, or is there
Yeah, there is a
an
driveway.
offset?
There is a driveway, just adjacent to it.
Just immediately, so we've
Yeah,
got
it's
a four bay garage, driveway entrance.
That's
there.
right.
Okay, I see. And Meredith, what's the drop from the parking stalls on Industrial Way that come close? What's the elevation drop that you have?
At the top of the stairs, top of the stairs is 17.91.
Oh yeah, I see it.
Yeah, bottom of stairs on the first building is 1571, and then 1627 on the other one. So the first one has 6 risers, the second one has 3.
Okay, so it's like 2 feet, 2.5 feet. Okay, all right.
And then 18 inches or something.
That's good. Was there any consideration for covered walkway all along the buildings?
Really, we didn't feel that was necessary to cover the walkway along the building. We wanted to highlight the entrances, and so normally this kind of building, they tend to highlight just the entrance, cover the entrance, and leave the rest.
Yeah, and you got high garage bay doors there. Okay. Is there another garbage recycling for the building adjacent to Discovery Way, or is it all in the back?
All collected there. So there is just one garbage inclusion.
And that size is sufficient for both buildings?
We think so, yes. By experience, we think yes. It depends very much on the arrangement on how often it is collected, obviously. So if this one is collected twice a week, I think it is because there will be 1 cardboard and 2 containers here, and then plus the recycling. So we feel that that is adequate for this size of development. We have done development like this before, and we experienced that there was no shortage of containers.
Okay, and for the building on the east side, is there a consideration to carry the sidewalk all the way around rather than the garbage enclosure right tight to the building? Could you
you mean
get a
instead of
sidewalk
attaching?
around and push
Yes,
that?
that would diminish a little bit the landscaping at the that's the only drawback in effect.
Okay.
But that is something that definitely can be taken into consideration. The space between the 2 buildings might be, one has to consider or give special care to that space, because the risk is to become just a small alley between the building and the garbage if we detach it completely. So we felt that maybe attaching it to the building and maximizing the landscaping would have been a better solution than just creating a small alley between the building.
The doors at the back are just for exit, really?
Yeah.
Fire exit?
Yeah.
So there's not going to be anybody going in those doors?
And the access to the garbage is from the front, so in reality...
Do you have a setback requirement for that garbage enclosure on the north property? Is there a setback there?
There would be a setback of, I believe, 1.52 meters for any accessory building and interior lot line, so, but
Okay.
it meets it.
Yeah, okay. Okay, that's all my questions. Thanks. Any final questions? We'll go around comments? Okay. Ted, do you have any comments?
No, I'm okay, apart from covered sidewalks. I think in the downtown we require covered sidewalks now.
The new development permit area guidelines will dictate that, but I think that's limited to downtown.
Okay, yeah. I just wanted to make a point to that. Someone will be shoveling sidewalks out there very unhappily.
Is that your own comment?
Yeah, well, on the street trees, you mentioned, I mean, I think the business park now is a little late for that, but I thought that was kind of interesting when you asked if the street had a, was it a tree?
A street tree for this.
Yeah, street tree for the tree. I don't know if we've done that anywhere, but that's nice.
Okay. Cheryl, do you have any comments?
I guess it's a little bit unclear, but you know, when you get further along your signage guideline criteria, right now there are these blocks. It feels very inconsistent with the architecture. So, and I think you have a good detail going on there, so you can consider integrating that detail in your signage criteria guideline rather than this big plaque of, I don't know, light box or whatever it is. It's not very nice. I guess articulation of your tilt-up panels, right? Because tilt-up, we can actually vary the depths. So you have, you know, made an effort to vary the height, I guess, at the corners. But I guess the next step would be looking at how to articulate really even the depths of the panels.
I think I personally agree with it. Again, the front, especially along Discovery, it can change the depth of the panel where the color changes.
Yeah, or even just run, I'll leave you to deal with it.
Yeah, sure.
So, as well, I guess the depth, speaking of the depths of the panels, I guess the height of the panels, right, where you have a little strip of gauze. For example, let's say we look at building A, south elevation, right? So you have tower, glass, panel, glass, tower, right? Like a small thing that can possibly make a difference if you vary the height of that glazing strip, right? Because it is a different material, so there's no need to carry that height consistently, right? So think about it. So it just gives it a bit more articulation rather than a big building, which it is. South elevation building B, it is still street facing, so I think you can do a little bit better there. Or perhaps consider a similar treatment of how you're addressing the street, similar to building A. And finally, your choice of the color of the glass. I'm just saying, sometimes you go around cities, downtown, whatever, right? Like if you see a certain color of the glass, and oh, you know, back in the 80s, we liked green, right? With that green mirror tint, so that was in the 80s. So I'm just saying, color sometimes it really dates your building. So perhaps you can reconsider that. So, and plus, I mean, your deal about the shading coefficient and this and that, I mean, in Vancouver, in Squamish in particular, there is a lot of rain, right? Blue kind of makes people feel a little bit differently, and there are studies about this all over Scandinavia, right? So just be a little bit mindful.
Thank you.
I won't echo comments that were made already, but in terms of forming character, I think, or site plans, right? I think it's really important to have a strong pedestrian connection between the buildings on both the north and the south. I wouldn't want that to see that as a loss to the green space, but I think those connections are really important to be very clear on the plan. And I think John will probably speak to this in much more depth, but just ensuring that, you know, the connection to the building for the user is very clear, so they're able to load the items that they need to carry on with their business. In terms of the landscape, along Discovery on the upper portion against the building, it would be great if there could be some seating incorporated into that area. And in terms of the street trees along Discovery and Industrial, they don't seem to quite fit. It would rather see a bigger, more robust street tree along those two areas. Along industrial, the lawn within the property, I appreciate the comment about it being flat. That makes a lot of sense, but it's a large area. We could get some good habitat plantings within there rather than lawn, and the maintenance of lawn, just increasing maintenance as well. And I would echo the city's comment about the parking and just ensuring that we get a little bit more parking islands, planted islands within that parking area to soften it up. Those are my comments. Thanks.
Okay, my comments are the ramp is far too steep, needs to be reduced. Ideally, 5 or 6. Because you're dealing with snow. Having said that, people who are going to come to the site are likely driving and parking here because there isn't parking on Discovery. So the accessible parking should be shifted so that you have them both at either end. And I would extend the access aisle to go all the way across. You might lose one spot, and as well as having a crosswalk access aisle at the north end between the two buildings. Those are my comments. Okay, awesome.
I think from a site perspective, a landscape perspective, it's a fairly robust landscape for an industrial area, so I think that's a good thing. I would encourage you to look at your vehicle circulation and turnarounds, and I think that's where you could lose the parking stall and maybe even lose 2 or 3 and get the accessible crosswalk in there too. Because it's going to be really difficult to turn around if it's a full day. And it's just normal to at least write off one parking stall as a turnaround. The building, I think Jenna brought up a good point, maybe benches at the front. I'm worried about all these opening doors on a very narrow walkway. I mean, I'd like to see the walkway outboard with a little bit of building base planning or benches so that you protect somebody from getting whacked by that door that suddenly flies open at you. So maybe look at that edge where the building hits the sidewalk plane and protect those doors and protect people along those walkways. I did have the same thought of the back of the building on the east side, whether you would bring that walkway right around to the garbage, but if that's not how your clients are going to use that back walkway, if it's only for fire, then leave it the way it is. But if your garbage is connected to the building, is it really all one building? In which case, you're in a setback violation, right? So you've got to be careful. I mean, that's a silly detail, but that's the way it's read. I would say echo, again, less lawn on Industrial Way. And I think that whole Industrial Way, and this rendering shows it beautifully, or shows it as it is, the south elevations of both those buildings are probably the weakest elevation that you have on all the buildings. And I'm not against blank walls. I think it'd be a beautiful palette to put some really strong street trees against. So either good architecture or good trees. And that might be the opportunity to introduce some conifers. I know staff had some comments about conifers, so there's a spot where you can introduce some conifers that aren't screening your tenants' spaces. That building signage high up, I wouldn't support. I think that should be at a canopy level, it's a pedestrian level, it's down where eyes are. You know, you don't need to see who's in that building 3 blocks away. So I would reconsider the signage the way it's shown in the elevations. But other than that, I think it's a good project.
Thank you. I actually have to start with by saying I think this is actually fairly lost opportunity. I think you can do much better on this site given where it's basically the most busy intersection of the business park. We're right now coming through there. And I would suggest to planning staff that this could even be looked at as a highway commercial, not so much a light industrial production use, but more of an actual commercial. Sales centers, I could see a motorcycle dealership going in here. And this building as it is not ideal for that use. That you could help them do much better, and in turn they would pay a much higher rental rate for the space. And I would definitely do an L shape with you in the back, and I would even say, if I can go so far, if I was on this property, I would come back to council and ask for the possibility of doing something with more density and height in this particular location. This is light industrial like you see throughout the whole business park. You're not differentiating yourself at all. You're competing in with exactly what can be found en masse. It's being developed and built everywhere. I would highly suggest doing something that's totally different, and you're going to find you'll be a lot more successful in that regard. Higher rates, higher leasing or sales, whatever you plan on doing there. That's my first suggestion, and that's what I would do. I'd love to help you with that, but that's a whole other thing. And because I think it would be good for the community and for the business park to have, differentiation in the product down there. So anyway, the other thing is that this, I do think that this parking area at the back with the roll-up doors and potential for loading in and out and whatnot is problematic. I don't think it provides for truly functional parking. If you say we're providing 34 stalls, you're not really going to get the usability or the function of 34 stalls in there with the various uses trying to get in and out and doing what they're doing. I just don't, I honestly don't think that that's truly a parking stall back there, or could be counted as one, so that really needs to be examined. And these little rollout things that you see on the top here, I don't know what you call those.
Just the islands?
The islands that you would typically see on a downtown street for traffic calming or something. Totally, I think, unnecessary here in this context. It's, I don't think anyone's going to be walking there. Truck tires are going to bump over them. It's a little bit of a useless sort of thing. So, anyway, that's where I'll stop.
I don't have any other comments to add except for just if you look at the south elevation, that will be most prominent for people. All other comments have been noted. Is there any other final comments that we want to address? Okay. Any discussion before we move to vote on this? Yeah. Do we have a motion for A, B, C, or D? A is supports ADP supports the project, does not need to see the project return for further review. B, ADP supports the project in general and would like the applicant to work with staff to resolve the following recommendations, and we can outline those. C, ADP would like the applicant to resolve the following recommendations and return to present to ADP. And D, ADP does not support the project for the following reasons. So do I have a motion for A, B, C, or D?
I'd throw B out there just to get the discussion going, so support in general.
Okay.
For staff.
Okay. I took down 18 comments.
Secondary, don't we?
Oh yeah, okay. Do you have a seconder on
Is there
B?
a seconder? Do we even have a motion?
Yeah,
No?
I'll second B.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So discussion on B before we vote.
I think there's I'm trying to wrap my mind around the loading and unloading into these spaces and how that's going to affect the parking, and how is there a curb cut there? Is there not a curb cut? How's that going to affect the sidewalk?
Yeah, I think it needs to be another layer of testing and design on it to figure out how the building's working and how the parking's working, and that's up to the client to do. John has some serious concerns about, the profile of the site and the opportunities may be missed. But I think, all the points that I heard around the table, I think are all ones that the client, if you're going with this design, could work out with staff.
Right? Yeah, rolling doors, and they're gonna remove the bollards or the wheel stops, make
I
it
think
functional.
You really need to look at the parking layout so that it actually coordinates with the architecture. Right now, the parking spaces are private, and they don't relate to the bays, they don't relate to the doors. The doors run into pedestrians, so I think it needs another go at it. And if you lose 4 parking stalls, you're still ahead of the game.
Yeah.
I think, John's concerns are valid. I think that's where, that's industrial way, if they stay with this concept, the industrial way side needs to be improved at a landscape level, at an architectural level, and a circulation level.
Next door is gonna be a car wash, I would call.
Yeah, that was kind of a funky building.
Right, yeah,
Always kind of interesting.
with good circulation.
Yeah.
So any further discussion on this for the motion in hand at B? Okay.
Those items, I mean, I would do something different with a slightly different use in mind, but that's a whole other conversation. If you stick with this building, I absolutely agree with Russ, and there's that industrial waste side is you can do so much better there. Functionally as well.
There's one more lot next door, across the way on Discovery Way, that's still vacant.
Yeah.
We have one more opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so let's vote for motion of B. So all in favor? Opposed? All right.
Thank you.
Should we summarize those?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have them.
I think we should summarize.
We should summarize, yeah.
Legislative Citizen wants to summarize.
Okay, yes. Okay, let's summarize our comments. Yes, my notes. Very good. Let's just use Meredith's summarize. So let's go through this. Some consideration of covered sidewalk areas, although you have to look at the loading bays. But there is quite a stretch on Discovery Way that could be covered. Signage to incorporate the architectural design, not just a big lit sign. Articulation of the depth of the panel, and I think you were in agreement with that there's some push and pull there. Glazing consideration, I think there was some strong words on coloring, and you can get tinted, but maybe not the green tint. Elevation, the south elevation of both buildings, there was strong comments about a little bit more detail there, or trees that will be better along Industrial Way. More robust trees, lawn, maybe lose the lawn for more habit-friendly shrubbery or whatever. Planting islands, you could lose a stall or two and incorporate some more plantings, although you're going to look at your loading bays and make sure they don't conflict with that. Reduce the ramp from what it is now of 8.3 to closer to 5 if possible. Maybe you need to rearrange that. Maybe there doesn't need to be 2 stair ramps at the south there. You're going to look at that ramp to try to get it to 5. Accessibility of parking and relocate the accessibility stalls with a crosswalk connecting both buildings.
Well, it's actually the access aisle that's adjacent to the parking spaces becomes the crosswalk.
Oh, okay,
So then that allows the extra space for unloading of the vehicle.
okay. Relook at your vehicle circulation in that you might need a hammerhead or some sort of turnaround at the bottom, at the south end. Relook at your doors, can they swing in maybe? Or, no, they can't swing in, okay, no, don't swing them in, but look at some sort of, I think,
Some
half meter
protection.
protection. Push them out. Lower the signage, especially on Industrial Way, to the canopied height. Big overarching is, you could get a better rates and better use of this lot. That will require rejigging, so consider that. Probably make more money, so. Roll-up door, use, not function, we talked about that and try to look at that layer of use. Anything else?
L-shape.
L-shape, consider an L-shape configuration here.
Did you cover architectural treatment of south elevation?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
What about the benches? There was talk about the
Benches.
benches.
Yeah,
Okay.
some more benches, there, that north little area by the, although it's by the garbage, maybe not the best spot for it, but find some more places for bench.
Hey, Crosland and I particularly were commenting on Discovery Way, making that corridor wider and incorporating seating along the Discovery Way edge.
So benches or plungers that would allow protection for those outswinging doors?
That was combined with the door common or separate?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, that's a good summary.
Can I ask one question just about the planting aisles in the parking area? I believe there was one comment, I believe it was you, John, that was talking about trucks hitting those. So do we want more or less of those? 'Cause
I'd
there's-
delete them altogether.
Well, it kind of goes against the bylaw or the guidelines. As long as the turning, and they show the turning maneuvers on there, that they're successful. I mean, they should be designed to work with the turning maneuvers. But they're empty space, right? You can't park anything there, so what are they if they aren't parkers, right?
Sometimes what we've done is added where the tips of the islands are, you add about 2 and 2.5 feet of concrete on the front of it, so the little blip of the curve is actually concrete. Because you know when they turn that corner, no one can drive in this city, so they always clip them. So I do like 2 feet of concrete on the island itself, so it becomes a little bit of
Little nose.
a little nose, bull nose, if you will. That helps a lot because it's actually basically a reminder saying, oh, by the way, you're hitting the tree now.
I'm
So-
just curious, is it pedestrian area or is it a light production industrial trucking zone?
Well, this is, you know, mom and pop shops and, you know, a glass place or an artist or something like that, right? So it's gonna be a whole mix, so it's not industrial. So I think the way to define the base of the building and circulation, I think those leftover spaces make good parking spaces, as long as they, the turning functions properly. So, I don't know, we differ on the.
Oh, it's a functionality issue, but that's.
I would agree with you, John, but I mean, we gotta come up with there.
Okay, that's just, that's minority
They're
report.
gonna be a nuisance for sure.
So, look at adding more, I would think, was the comment. Not taking them out. Yeah, there we go. That's a good summary for you?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate the comment.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, let's wrap it up. We had 2 for 2 today. Next is any business on the menu here?
Yes,
Yeah.
I would like to make a request again, that when we get our agenda packages, the drawings are available online, but they're not coming in this as well as that, because we're just using so much paper.
Yeah.
Right, like it's sort of redundant, they're way too small to look at anyways in these packages, so it would be great to have just the report, and the drawings be left to the larger.
Totally agree.
Good point.
Okay.
Can we save some trees?
Is that okay for you?
Yeah.
Well, we get drawings in digital, right? Everyone hands them in digital?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, this
But if we've got
package
this
still
and
could be
this,
online.
without the back half,
Yeah, no, all I got was this one.
Oh,
They have
Yes.
to be available to the public as well, and that's why they're online. So the public has to have access to them too.
Yeah, no, and it should be available online, but
You
when
just
they're
don't-
being printed out.
You just don't want them printed?
yeah.
11 by
8.5
17, but not 8.5 by 11.
Got you.
Yeah, so just the drawings not in the agenda packet.
Yep.
That's all.
Okay. Good suggestion. Council?
Yeah, so I've got a question for the ADP, and we're starting to see height come in to some of the projects now in the district. And we've kind of kicked it around a little bit at a council level. And I'm just trying to get some advice on what would be an appropriate way to envision where the height's going to go. Or do we wait for the development that wants to be high? That's a question to the architects.
What kind of height do you mean?
Well, potentially 12 stories will come. Because that's, we're like Richmond, or Geo is like Richmond, so I think the maximum you'll ever see here is 12 stories. And, you know, we've had one come in at 8, and we've got one that's proposed 12, and they're just kind of firing in. And myself, I'd like to get an idea of where height would be best located in our town. And, you know, we've discussed it, like I say, just a little bit at a council level, and I'd just like to have something better to tell them than just my opinion.
And the OCP doesn't touch on any of that?
The OCP talks about FARs. We're talking specifically downtown. So it talks about FARs.
Well, no, when I say height, I mean anywhere.
Yeah,
It
so.
could be up behind the Canadian Tire, could be.
No. The OCP does not talk about that. It's specific to downtown. We have limitations in terms of our fire department, which I believe caps it at 9. After 9 stories, we can't respond. We're not resourced to respond. So that's like a physical limit. But that's only until we get to a level where we have a full-time fire department. And then sky's the limit, I guess. The oceanfront sub-area plan has the 12 stories in it on the east, or the west side of the Madcom Blind Channel, and kind of like on the northern end of the peninsula, if you can imagine. And then the downtown floor area ratios allow for this kind of higher massing. I think, well, it's silent on height, but it allows for the higher FARs. You know, if you go west of 3rd Avenue, I think. So that's where sort of the vision is to be more higher density residential development. And I think the FARs and the parking and the lot sizes kind of dictate the height around 6 to 8 stories in the rest of downtown.
So do you figure that's good enough?
The discussion we've had with council is always, you know, we want to keep it flexible. Let's focus on FAR and allow people to go up rather than out. And then parking is always the natural limiter.
Yeah, and they have to prove that there's exceptional benefits to going high for everything and not impact other neighbors.
Well, I mean, that's one issue. 20 years ago when we did some visioning in the downtown, at that time we talked about height on 3rd, 12-story on 3rd, 8-story on, you know, and sloped it to the water. And so that was in a visioning doc. I think it was in the 2000 plan, but I mean, that was 20 years ago. So, you know, and we as council hasn't really got their head around it, in my opinion. And so I'm trying to get us to talk about it, but I can't seem to I don't have an argument that wins. We go with planning all the time.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's not a good
It's not a bad place to
case.
start.
It's, I mean, it would be great to have the research to actually go through that exercise and find out. It just seems like there's so many priorities that we have to fulfill, and I think it's more of a resourcing issue.
I mean, you could keep it where it is now. The other strategy would be to let the applicants come in and earn it and show you something that's so amazing that you can't turn it down and you think it's really good. I mean, that's one way of doing it.
Yeah.
The other is to predetermine it, and then everybody will build to the limit, and you'll just get more mediocre stuff to the limit. No.
More stringent design guidelines.
I mean, you go drive down Lonsdale Avenue, you know, it's got little one-story wood shacks still, 2 rows back, towers, right?
Yeah,
and I kind of imagine Cleveland won't be much different than that in another 20 years.
Yeah.
It's going to be little bits, you know. Lonsdale is a very vibrant street and kind of what you'd like to have, but it'll never be high-rises unless you get into the third Avenue kind of row, right?
Yeah. Now, how about making people understand height? Like 12-story. We're going to put a 12-story.
You just have to
Oh,
see
yeah,
what.
it's 12-story.
Yeah.
It seems to me that you need a robust urban design strategy, and to hire, if resources are limited, then hire an urban design team to do a feasibility study about what that would look like and what that would mean. And then, as you say, there's all these other parameters in terms of the fire, what they can handle and things, but, you know, it might be very helpful. And they can do visualizations, they can look at density, they can look at traffic numbers, projected into population growth and all those things, just to visualize it a bit more.
Does Squamish really need to go that high yet?
Yeah.
I mean, you're
Well,
not
it's
that short
coming.
of land.
I mean, it's
There's
not
an awful lot
Squamish.
of-
It's not Squamish, it's what people bring in.
Can I just throw into this that I was working on a 12-story building in 2007 with Cameron Chalmers and the district here on Doug Day's lot, which is a gateway to the ocean front. And we were very close to getting that brought to council. Planning staff supported it. It was
Well, at that time.
12-story building
all
in
the
2007.
density, at that time, all the density was given to that area. Part of the reason it was given to that area is to take community amenity contributions away from the lower lying area and put it somewhere.
Mhm.
So all the density got put in there. I mean, in that corner, there was towers everywhere, right? That was somewhat alleviating how many community amenities the oceanfront was gonna have to supply, because we had given it, oh, we'll get them all from this area. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so, well, I like the robust design, and, you know, I don't think we'll ever finance something like that in the short term. I mean, possibly we will someday. I was always just thinking the 2000 plan idea, we're high back there and lower to the water. The other question I have is, you know, in the 3D drawings, you know, I'll be bringing that up to council on Tuesday about getting that changed. And now, the other thing is, it's just something that's kind of a little subtle, but
Until that changes, those staff has been good at encouraging applicants, and most applicants now work in 3D anyway, so it's unusual not to get it, but if you guys continue to encourage it, it's
Yeah,
not
we
required,
will
but it's,
continue to record, for sure. It's
we're not
again,
getting it.
It's again, we could go ahead now and then work on the bylaw, get it done in a couple months. But it's like, so what else do we stop,
Well, exactly.
right?
You know,
And these
that's the
procedural
story of our
things-
lives. You know, like, we
Yeah.
got these things to do, we don't have those things to do. So, I mean, we can't do it all. And we had a meeting the other day, the list of things we wanted to get done before council was, I think there was 40 things on the list, and we picked 3. You know, it was like, well, that's not gonna get done. Anyway, but, you know, I was hoping there was another way where council may be able to just override the bylaw and make something that says, yes, we want it. Because, you know, this is fine, you know, getting these drawings like that with that, I mean, that's acceptable. But when you get something out of the ordinary, which is height, and you're saying this is gonna be this high, and there's nothing in town to compare that height to. And then you even show it on on the lot, which is my next point, is you get renderings from developers that fake. They give you a shot that won't put it in perspective to something. They don't give you the shots that really put things in perspective. You know what I mean? And I find that really sneaky, and I'm kind of offended by it a bit, because I go, oh, look at that shot. Oh, of course, you know. I would do it myself. You know, spin the shot around here, and you're not going to see how imposing this is on the neighbors. And then in some cases, even shrink the building. Like instead of the floors being 10 feet, shrink them down to 6 foot, and I can show you examples. So, and that's happening to us.
So conceivably, I mean, I'm not saying that you're lying, but the consultant typically generates these drawings,
right.
And they're professionals, so I have a hard time believing that. So
I'll bring this up.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's kind of like,
If
you know,
somebody
if
was,
it has
I
me to do
think
a
it's
fake
coming
drawing, I
to
would
ADP,
never do
those.
What's that?
If I think we're talking about the development we're talking about, then I think it's coming to ADP.
Yeah.
You guys will see it.
Yeah,
You'll be
okay.
able to
Yes.
comment on it.
No, but I'm talking about us when we get it. You know, the angles that we are getting. And, you know, like planning, if it's an extraordinary building, planning will bring that to council long before it goes anywhere.
Sure.
Planning will bring it to us and say, what do you think of this?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I find even those meetings are somewhat, we're a little council, I mean, what do we know? I mean, I wish they'd bring it to ADP and say to you guys, what do you think?
Well, that's because we are advisory.
Yes.
It's your prerogative to say, oh, this is very interesting, but before we go any further, let's send it to ADP. Right?
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, it's true.
That's the
Totally.
A in
And we get stuff and I go,
ADP for it.
you know, and you know, some of the shots are misrepresented of what really is there. And I'm trying to get my head around 8 stories, and I know, I walk around the city and I'll walk beside an 8-story building and I'll go, okay, there's 8 stories. And then you get all the artist renditions of things, you go, that's 4 stories. Oh, but look, no, it is actually 8 stories. You know what I mean?
That's right, I have definitely seen that.
I mean, nowadays modeling is pretty accurate. You'd have to purposefully skew it.
That's right.
And
Or
that
they-
would be.
It's the angle they pick, they look at a whole bunch of angles and they go, this is the least
Yeah, fair
offensive
enough.
one, and that's what they give you.
You know, for centuries, we've been getting hand-drawn drawings that are very calculated
Yeah.
views, right? So I think now the benefit of, if they do allow you to spin around a project, they can't clip review for you, right?
Well, I've
So
seen-
then if you've got a movie, then you get to
a
pick your own.
picture of a
hand.
4-story building where you're standing looking at it and you can see the chief over the top.
Yeah.
And in reality, when you're standing in front of that building, there's no hope ever of seeing the chief over the top. Anyway, I don't know, I just wanted to bring that up because I didn't know if you had any, you know, you say they're professionals, they're not gonna do that, and
Is there a town model? Like a lot of planning departments have had a model, and every time a project gets done, a new one gets put in, and then that model is available for applicants to come in and put their own. And that takes it a little bit out of the control of the digital master.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
But it requires a
We don't
visual
have,
model.
no, but that's a really good idea. I think that we could, and I think that we have been approached in the past by, you know, university students to do something like that.
And if they're really
maybe like
simple,
massing.
woodcut model, right? Very plain. There's no style, it's just form and
Yeah.
mass.
well, you could do that on an ArchiCAD drawing, you do the whole downtown.
You could, yeah,
Pop
and maybe
on.
that's the way you go, but then, I don't know, there's something still about a real model that's tangible.
You know, I made one 20 years ago, the downtown south, I made it.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry I threw it away, but.
I got some grade
You probably
7s that
cheated
want
on
to do
the
a
heights.
model.
Yeah, well, that's right, yeah, that's right. I got UBC architect students to
Oh,
do
yeah.
mine. So, and then we're working on the 3D modeling, and actually ADP made a recommendation to council on the 3D rendering and models for, I mean, that's what we were looking at, right, Jonas?
Like physical models?
Physical models of the bigger, more substantial.
It was helpful for.
I hope Kelsey's not listening. It's difficult, yeah, we definitely don't have that requirement.
Well, I thought that was part of the motion to get the 3Ding in on the more complicated ones when we go with the models. I just don't want to be tricked. And to lay people looking at little drawings of big buildings, it's just not fair. So anyway, so those were the two things I had on here. And, so that helps.
But I think you've got control right now as council to, on height and things where you can, people earn it, then you might consider it, but otherwise you can keep the height down where it is.
Well, just to be candid, I'll say, council was brought in drawings, 6 drawings. Which one do you like? Okay, so that's engaged council into the discussion. It wasn't on height, it was on which drawing do you like. So we had a lot of discussion on which drawing we liked. And we didn't have any discussion on height, it was mostly which drawing we liked. And then we picked a drawing, and then away it went, we came back again, well, how do you like that? Well, we're still not talking about height. We're still not really getting, I wanted to bring the pump truck down here that has a 60-foot boom and have it, take it out the side and stand it at 60 feet up like this and get council to go and go, okay, that's 6 stories. Right? Anyway, I know I'm not gonna, it's a tough one. Because, like council, we're not visionaries, I mean, we've got accountants and lawyers and everybody on there, and it's just, it's a tough one.
We do have 6-story buildings in Squamish that, anyone can walk up to. The Aqua building as well as the clock tower. So I think maybe it's just bringing in more examples of what an actual building looks like that's 8 stories.
Isn't the new project we just put through this next to the Shoppers Drug Mart, is that 6 stories?
That's 6 stories.
Yeah, they're all coming in at 6 stories now.
I think that's a good example of one that really didn't represent very well in the drawings as to the impact. It'll have a big impact down there. I think it's, I mean, you guys know I didn't like that building at all. But I saw the model, which we didn't get in here. And that's the difference, right? If you saw the model, you'd just be like, whoa. Because it's full site, 0 lot lines all the way around.
5-foot setback all the way
It's going to
around.
look like a giant mushroom there, so. Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of worried that, I mean, they're coming, and we're approving them now. But when I lay in bed at nighttime thinking, wow, geez, when all these things go in, like, what's the town going to be like? And I know there's going to be a heck of a lot of people here, which will be really good for all the little stores, and like Longsdale, who was just mentioning Longsdale there. So
it's going to be a vibrant town.
Yeah, vibrant.
It's challenging if physical models aren't, you can't say you have to have one and you don't, but for key buildings, it's really doing a disservice to the long term of the community. If, for example, that building, if there was a model, we weren't allowed to see it, and that would have had a remarkable impact on our thoughts. That's a problem, right? And equally, lack of context. If we're just looking at a little postage stamp and there's no understanding of the bigger story, that's also a problem. There should almost be a diagram that says, this one's 6, that one's 2, that one's 7, and we can see the relationship of what that is.
Better context in all the applications, like even the one here today, there's the brand new car wash going in next door. Well, it wouldn't have taken a second to drop in their plan next to this plan and just see how they work, right?
And also look at it from the freeway, one by.
Streetscape drawings, right? So my 6-story next to your 2. And in the future, if this develops, how it looks like that. So streetscape drawings, kind of like City of Vancouver. And the slopes of the site, right? Because people kind of think that land is always flat, which is not, right? So, and I guess the model, physical model, it does cost a lot to make, but there should be a requirement of rezoning, all rezonings.
They're also making a lot of money on the building.
So rezoning.
Anything over 50 units or something, probably have it in the realtor sales office.
And maybe that's the solution, where there's a number of the size of the building, and that warrants when the model has to kick in.
But you
Like
see-
this project, absolutely not. That's a huge resource for really nothing. But
It would have taken this guy more than an afternoon to cube that up and put it on a map. Not the windows, doors, but the unfortunate part is we're talking about it, and I'm going to go to council and try and get some mileage on it, but, and hopefully we do. And I know the minutes are being taken, so your comments, I'll refresh myself with your comments when I'm bringing it up at the next meeting. But
In most projects, if they're significant, come in wanting variance, that's your opportunity to ask for more.
Well, I said
You don't give anything away
Yeah.
for free.
I offend people when I say that. I've been accused of extortion.
No, you have to earn variances.
Yeah.
You don't just get them because, if they're true hardship, yeah.
Yeah.
But if they're, we overbuilt, so can you give us variance?
yeah. In Vancouver, in big projects, you require two models. You require a context model and you require a more zoomed in model of your project. That's standard, right?
But we don't have.
Well,
very
those are
many-
big projects.
We don't have very many big
It's
spots
warranted.
in the town apart from when people start amalgamating, which I'm pretty sure will happen along Third Avenue, all those will start parceling out. Okay. Well,
Okay.
thanks.
Or I have something that I was discussing across and I'd like to propose for us, if that's possible. The wording, we've got our standard options A, B, C, or D for each project. And I've found in one of our past projects that the wording for C was a little bit problematic where we sent them away. We wanted them to come back, but it also said we support the project and they should come back. I'm suggesting that the word support the project should just be taken out, that we simply want them to come back. Because we didn't necessarily support the project. And it seems strange to me to say that we're saying your project's okay, but we're also saying it's not okay, you have to come back.
Right. And then what's the difference between B and C ultimately?
Exactly.
It's kind of B light.
Yeah.
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 So if we struck supports the project in general, and it says that instead, the advisory design panel would like the applicant to resolve. So we just striking supports the project in general and, that just gets struck out. So everybody's
You could say does not support the project in general, but that would be pretty wordy, but it really is the essence of what we're saying when we're saying come back.
Yeah. Especially when you compare it to B and say, oh, that important word is missing.
Yeah.
You're saying it.
So you got that?
Did.
Okay,
Let's be
perfect.
Canadian about
That's
it,
it.
not say.
Then we just need to get it into all the templates. Just need to get it into all the templates of all the planners.
Yeah,
They got
and then we decide on the course.
No, we don't have to vote.
It's
No.
easier to
We
copy
all
and
go,
paste instead of-
save as.
Just change,
Or just change the wording going forward and.
We're suggesting to change the wording moving forward.
well, what if people don't support that?
We can vote on it.
Okay.
I had an observation, and I keep meaning to bring it up. Driving into town and driving around, the new signage, I think, is excellent. The forms with the cutout metal and, they cover all the bases. There's a solid First Nations base, there's a bit of industrial, and there's a bit of, so I don't know what the feedback in town has been, but I think it's a good quality signage package.
That's good.
Yeah.
I think more has been proposed, and as a taxpayer, I would say enough is enough right now.
Yeah, we're getting, what's our budget, $1 million or $2 million?
I don't know.
It was at least $1 million budget to do it. I think we're doing 200,000 a year. We're going into year 2 or year 3. And so we're going to get our entrance sign figured out this year, which is probably going to take that whole 200,000.
Yep.
And then we still have a bunch of neighborhood stuff to go, but I think there's 3 years left at 200,000 a year.
Okay.
So we're getting beat up by it, just like from what John said.
Yeah, so, but mine is not knowing the history on it, and
Yeah.
just what I see seemed like enough for starters, but I thought was really attractive. I think it was really well done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I didn't realize you were being beat up.
You're always beat up. You're always beat up.
I'm unfortunately going to have to raise my tenant's rent because of the tax increases, and which in combination with mortgage rates going up is causing a problem for affordability, and really should be something on the minds of council.
We just had the discussion whether to raise residential a little bit more, business a little bit less. And we long conversation, and we went with residential. And then I started talking to a bunch of businesses, and I said, I think I'd like to change my mind and drop the business a bit, because all the business people were telling me, drop business, I'd rather pay more in my residential. It was like $17 in residential and $300 in
I think the
business.
budget should be slashed.
Yeah.
That's what
Well,
I think.
Anyways, that's not an ADP
Yeah.
comment. Let's,
Anyway.
any further ADP comments
Well,
or discussions?
Vote on that change.
Did we
Oh.
need to have a vote?
Okay,
on
let's
the
vote on the
language change?
suggested change for wording
So
of,
I'll make a motion to support that.
okay? Seconded Jenna, all in favor? Carried.
Done.
Thank you.
So anyway, we
Let's
didn't go.
close. Thanks, Kelsey. Motion to adjourn?
I have one item. Oh,
Oh,
sorry,
yeah.
just a quick one. We discussed in the past about adapting the timeline for each project based on when there's a big mega project coming in. They do need more than an hour to